Today's topic is really something that drives home a very sensitive, just a very painful thing for me. If you've ever thought that the government and lawyers were out to get you, I wish I could dispel that myth. In my 13 years of practice, I can say that they kind of are. And what we're going to talk about today is what you can do to actually protect your family. The Adult Protective System, APS, is very much built along the same lines as CPS, the Children Protective Services, though that's now named something else in Arizona because it got such a bad reputation. We're going to talk about the Adult Protective Services today and what it does in its own version of protecting our elderly. So my goal really for today is to help two types of people. For those of you who maybe aren't up to date at all on how this could affect your elderly parents, you're in the right place. For those of you who maybe have a handle or have been through this before or are in the midst of having to take care of your parents, this will help you learn how to do that. Maybe some of you are here and your parents have already passed away, or they're maybe decades away from needing anything like this. I hope you learn something so that you can share this with people in your life who are going through it, because there's a lot of people struggling with this right now. So my two goals are to teach as much as I possibly can in an hour for you to know how to make sure your parents don't end up as wards of the estate, wasting tens of thousands of dollars of their own money and being just dragged through a mess for years of their life. And then second, I'm going to share with you guys exactly how to set up and do this through what I call an automated trust. And we do that at our firm through something called a trust care program. So I'm going to explain some more details about that. So I want you to be able to know how this whole thing works and how it's done. And that way you can just make the best decisions you possibly can for your family. What I can't do, what the state bar doesn't allow me to do, we have to have this disclaimer right up front. I can't give specific legal advice for your situation today in this setting. So you just have to go with the flow here. This is not specific legal advice for your situation. This is general information of an educational nature that I want you to have, because I know it'll help you make better decisions. So take this information, use it, and don't just stick your head in the sand like what happens with a lot of the situations that we're going to talk about today. This is just I'm really passionate about this because of what I discovered, kind of some of the ugly backstory. So I just want to share with you what I found when I first got into this business, because it shocked me, honestly. I wanted to do estate planning, wills and trusts, and help families organize their affairs. And what I found as I kind of dug into that, learning from some really good attorneys, was that there's no liability, really, on the attorney or the paralegal or whoever you use when they're creating your will or your trust. There's no liability on them if it goes wrong, if it doesn't work. And what I dug and found out was that there's not really much incentive for it to work, because the real money is made when these things don't work, and everybody ends up in court fighting about this stuff. And it just got to be really, really ugly. And that's when I finally started my own firm. And it took me many, many years to figure out how to do this in a way that has to work at some unknown day in the future, right? And so about 2014, 15 maybe, is when we finally figured out, okay, these are the things that need to happen. This is exactly how it's supposed to happen. All the extra stuff that has to happen, in order for it to, you do it now and for it to work some unknown day in the future. So that's what I'm going to be sharing with you guys, is how to do that, how it works. A little bit about my firm, my family. Any chance I can get to brag about them, I'm going to. My wife, Nicole. The two on the outside picture are twins, actually, Gabriel and Bella, and then Sophie and Zach in the middle. We all have somebody, something we love and care about, would just do anything for. This is my family, and I would just do the same thing for them. Our firm, Keystone Law Firm, just so you know a little bit about it, I'm the founder and owner of Keystone Law Firm. We're consistently, getting awards every year. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty exciting. Our firm has protected over $800 million of our clients' property and money from this adult protective services system, from just the ugliness that exists out there. And you are going to get to use this information and hopefully protect your family. So let's dig in. The reason why this is so motivating for me was, this is just a great story. This is a great example of what this couple did. They set up their will, their trust power of attorney, through the automated update program that gets all of their affairs really organized. And what happened was, like does happen sometimes, is they became incapacitated some years later, and that's the trigger. That's the trigger in Arizona for when Adult Protective Services can step in and completely destroy your life. And had that happened, they would have become wards of the state. And what's uniquely different about the Adult Protective Services system and the Child Protective System for minors is that when you get, or your parents get dragged into the Adult Protective Services system, they use their money to pay all of the professionals, the lawyers, the court fees, everything. Whereas the Child Protective System, they don't, because children don't have money. Well, adults typically do, and they will drain that thing to zero if that's the system that you're in. So this particular couple, we know, had they been dragged into that system, they would have spent $67,000 to $106,000 on all those court fees and costs and attorneys, and it would just completely just continue to drain all of their money that's really supposed to be there to protect them, right, and care for them in their most vulnerable years. But instead, their trust care program, their automated everything that happened to set up to protect them, completely kept that out of the system, protected it. They didn't have any fees at all, and those are called probate fees, just so you know. Had zero probate fees, no time dragged through court. Their family got to just take care of them and protect them as they went through those most, vulnerable years of life. And that's a huge success for us. So that's what we're going to talk about. I'm going to share with you exactly how they did that and how you can do it too. So these are the three big takeaways. I want you to walk away. If you're taking notes, these are the three things to write down. It's where we're going to spend our time going through, digging in, sharing with you all of everything I can about this, because this is what you came for. So number one, do your parents have the 5 emergency medical documents that they need? Number two, have they updated their trust within the last year? Yeah, I said within the last year. And 3, do you have an asset report for them? Do you have their complete asset report? So we're going to dig in. I'm going to show you what all these things are, and I want you to start taking notes. Now, I'm not going to spend a ton of time today explaining what a trust is or when you need one or why you need one. I've got other education. I've got other web classes that I've taught on that. You go check out our YouTube channel, look at our website, just get on our online stuff. It's free, you can learn it. I'm 100% confident. A will is not enough. Trust completely are the new will if you're in Arizona, if your parents are in Arizona, and most other states it's the same thing. So I'm kind of skipping past all of that. I'm just going to say, assume they need a trust, period. That's the best way to take care of them while they're alive. And all it does is it's privately set up. It owns their stuff. It's controlled. They control it while they're alive and well. Very easy if they want to make changes. Very hard if somebody wants to challenge it. Those are just the key sort of features of a living trust, okay? So I just have to lay that as the foundation for where we're going next. Otherwise, it's not, you're going to feel like we skipped over it. But if you want to learn more about that, go check out our YouTube channel. I've got some web classes that I taught there, which will go through the foundations for that, okay? I might also be in a t-shirt in one of those videos too. Okay, number one, do your parents have the 5 emergency medical documents that they need? What we're talking about here is this giant system that exists. In Arizona, it exists in every state to protect, that's what they say, elderly adults, vulnerable adults. And the moment that they can get involved is when their health or mental health starts to decline to the point where they can't really stand up for themselves and protect themselves. Because at that moment, if somebody can't stand up for themselves or protect themselves, then they're really at risk, right, of people taking advantage of them. And, you know, we hear stories. We had one client who, this was so terrible. She had never been involved really in the finances. It had always been her husband's job. Well, his health was declining, his memory, and you know, was just getting to the point where she knew it was declining, the family knew it was declining, but they didn't do anything because they didn't know what to do until it was too late. And they found he had literally been answering phone calls while she was out and giving donations to charity, right? And they had been setting them up for monthly recurring donations to the point where there was something like 15 different charities that were charging their account every single month. And this just went on and on and on and on until finally she got into the money, got into the bank accounts, and saw that this was happening. It's at that moment that we've got to protect our most vulnerable seniors, our most vulnerable family members. And if you don't have all of these things in place before that moment comes, because once that happens, you can't go back and fix it. That's when you get stuck into the system. And in Arizona, that's why here there's a picture of probate on there. In Arizona, that court process, the adult protective services, and all of that to protect vulnerable adults is done in our probate system. It's a guardianship, it's a conservatorship. We're going to talk about these some more, but it's in probate, okay? So when you think of vulnerable adults being taken advantage of, if they don't have all their legal ducks in a row, then they're ending up in probate while they're alive. Okay? Now, the way that can be triggered is if, you know, this was one of the sad story. We got a call from a daughter whose mom and dad actually been married a long time, and she said that they had to admit dad to the hospital because he had Alzheimer's. Mom and dad were living at home. They were doing fine until dad had to go to the hospital, and the hospital wouldn't discharge him directly home, needed him to go to a rehab, and he was going to need some longer stay in a group home. And when that happens, all these medical people are now liable, right? I mean, we hear about malpractice liability and all the time. Well, they're all liable, so they're the ones checking to make sure everything's in order. And they said to the daughter, you know, there's nobody appointed, nobody legally designated to make decisions for your dad. And they had talked to the mom, but she was quite elderly and she wasn't capable of doing this, of satisfying that legal requirement. And so the daughter's like, well, okay, well, what do I need to do? Do I need my dad to sign something? And they said, no, your dad can't sign anything. It's not legal if he does. He's past that point. And so in their policy book, they tell her, they say, you, daughter, you're going to have to go to court and get guardianship. And that's in the probate, okay? That's in probate court. So she got referred to us. We had to help her go through this process. Ended up her and her sister don't quite get along, so the sister ends up hiring a lawyer. Becomes a big giant mess. The family spends tens of thousands of dollars in court. I mean, in this particular example, $40,000 in court fees and costs 6 months for them to be able to get in and start to manage dad's affairs. And I mean, it was just a nightmare. That's what happens if this isn't all set up and in place before the emergency. So like what happens, I get it with most people, is we're just enjoying life. And especially if you're one of these, you know, adult children kind of in that baby boomer generation where your parents are still alive and they're getting elderly, and you're starting to have to think, or maybe already, you know, having to actually take care of them on a daily or weekly or monthly basis. And they were just living their life, minding their own business. Maybe they were traveling, enjoying retirement. It's when, boom, that emergency happens, that when that emergency happens, if things aren't done, boom, they end up with the rest of their life being a ward of the state. And now the court system has to oversee and approve and monitor everything that's going on. And it becomes insanely expensive, insanely frustrating. And you can't just take care of your parents like we used to be able to do in the old days, where that they probably did for their parents, right? It's just not allowed anymore. There's too much liability out there. And the hospitals, the medical personnel, the group homes, the assisted living homes, they require all of your ducks in a row, all the I's dotted, all the T's crossed, and that's just what's going to end up happening. What should they have done? Here it is, okay? Live their life, mind their own business, retire, enjoy, travel, do whatever they want, right? But add to that these 5 basic medical documents, okay? 5 basic medical documents, so that when the emergency happens, they can just have the rest of their life in peace. They don't have to worry about this because they know their loved ones, their designated family, whoever they designate, is going to be able to just take care of them so they can just retire in peace. 5 main medical documents. Here they are. Number 1, healthcare power of attorney. That's the document that designates an individual or maybe 2 people with some backups to make medical decisions for you on the short term in an emergency, but also in the long term if there's a Alzheimer's or dementia diagnosis, okay? Second, mental health power of attorney. That's, again, that designates someone to make decisions for you with regard to any kind of mental health issues. And in Arizona, what they count there is Alzheimer's and dementia, but also any kind of bipolar, schizophrenic, other mental health diagnosis. Or there's a few others. And that one will let you seek treatment with a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a neurologist, and any kind of mental or cognitive issue. Third is the living will. Living will. That one says what the wishes are regarding your end-of-life choices. Okay, do you want to be on life support indefinitely or not? You want to die naturally. That's your wishes there. Fourth is a HIPAA authorization. HIPAA authorization is the document that says you're allowed to call and talk to the hospital and say, hey, what room is mom or dad in? Okay, that's that one. And then the last one, 5, is their emergency legal agent. Critical to have that in place because all these first 4, okay, they're great, you got to have them, but what if your parents say, I designate my son Francisco as my medical power of attorney on that first document? Great. Wonderful. I will act as that, for my parents, if that's what they said, right? Well, what if I'm unavailable the moment there's an emergency? What if I'm on vacation with my wife and my kids? What if I'm just in a client appointment and I can't answer my phone? What if I'm literally unavailable in the emergency? That's what document number 5 is for, an emergency legal agent. This designates a whole list of people that have your permission to just triage that momentary emergency until your permanent agent is available. That's critical. It's that little gap right there, because if there's nobody available, who knows what the hospitals are going to do. So we want to get someone in there that you trust, and we do a whole list of them. Now we've created a way for you to get that 5th document there online, super easy. It's $29. You just go to emergencylegalagent.com, fill that out. You just buy it right there. It gets all emailed to you. Really simple process. We just launched that here, kind of a soft launch in the last couple of weeks. So if you run into some glitches, let us know. We'll fix it. But super easy way to get that document. Nobody else in the state of Arizona, there's no other firm, there's no other paralegal who's doing that 5th critical piece. We created that when we realized this was a problem. Okay, so this is kind of the conclusion to part 1. 5 basic medical documents. Okay, get those all done for them. Make sure they've got all 5. And if you want to get that emergency legal agent, you just go to emergencylegalagent.com. Bam. All right, number 2. You get a little sip of coffee. Have they updated their trust in the last year? This is the one where I was most frustrated when I learned about this. So I first started doing estate plans in 2007, and I completely redid how I was doing them starting in 2014. So 7 years, and then learned, oh my gosh, this is wrong, how I've been doing it. What I had been doing was the way I've been trained by some really good attorneys and some good sources. I mean, I got better than normal training on this stuff. And what the standard in the industry still is, you'll see it, it's the way LegalZoom does it, it's the way every lawyer that I know does it except for my firm, is they make you or your parents sign part of the document that says, we, the lawyers, have no liability if this goes wrong. Because, and they justify themselves by saying, because we don't know what your life is going to look like tomorrow or in the future. We don't know what the laws are going to be like tomorrow or in the future. We don't know what your assets are going to be like tomorrow or in the future. And so as of today, it's good, but as of in the future, we don't know. And that's what my whole industry does. The whole industry. LegalZooms is even worse. They say the only guarantee they give is if it doesn't work, there's no guarantee whatsoever. But in order to get their guarantee at all, you have to go to court. You have to ask the court to make a finding that the documents were invalid because you created them through an online resource, which is just insane, because that's never going to happen. Anyway, as I worked and got more and more into the industry, learning how things were so messed up, and it was built that way literally because lawyers make tons of money in the probate system. They make tons of money when adults become vulnerable and have to go through the nightmare. They make tons of money. That's why it's built like that. So, okay, anyway, what does a trust do for your parents? Number 1, if they set up their trust correctly, they keep it up to date, they put everything in there, okay, then when the emergency happens, that's what you use to manage their finances and pay their bills. You don't use anything else. You use the trust. That's the best way to do it, because what happens is like, so okay, yeah, here's the perfect example. Clients set up their trust. They weren't clients, I'm sorry. They're clients now because they're in the nightmare. Set up their trust years ago, and emergency happens. Dad becomes incapacitated. family goes to start trying to use the trust to manage the bank accounts, pay the bills, pay his bills because he's getting very expensive. And the bank and the financial, where the investments were, looked at the trust and said, basically, this thing's like 10 years old, and nobody's kept it up to date, really? And they said, sorry, we're not going to take the risk of using that thing. We just need you to go get a court order, because that's how we know for sure you have the permission to do this. And they didn't keep their trust up to date. They didn't even get it funded correctly, which we're going to talk about as number 3. But that's a huge problem. It's got to be kept up to date. So how up to date does it need to be? Here's the big ugly secret that Arizona law doesn't have. We don't have any laws that tell us how often do these things need to be updated. We don't. So my experience is all we're going off of right now. Number 1 is you don't want anything to get more than 1 year old. You just don't. So far, doing this now for $800 million of my clients' money, it has worked 100% of the time. 1 year. So once a year, you've got to look at your situation and update it, okay? Number 2, what do you need to update on an annual basis? The most important thing is to ask yourself 3 questions. You should write these down under this section. Well, first, it's people, it's money, and it's laws. People, money, laws. Those are the 3 factors that can change, that can affect your plan. People, money, and laws. People, you're looking at all the people in your life and in your plan. Okay, it's your spouse. So if you're talking about your parents, it's the spouse, it's the kids, it's the grandkids, it's the great-grandkids. If they have parents that are still alive, it's their parents. If they have siblings that are still alive, it's their siblings, okay? Or if they have any charities that are involved in their plan, or if they have any friends or other people, anybody who's involved in the plan, plus all the family members, whether they like the family members or not. Those are all the people. And then, with regard to each of those people, each person, you have to ask, has there been any new births, any deaths, any disabilities, any medical issues? With regard to each person, has any of them gotten married, gotten divorced? Have any of them entered into a life partner situation? Do any of them have any new creditor problems, financial problems, bankruptcies? Those are most of the factors you're going to think about with respect to your people, because any change in any of those can mean, yes, we need to change something in your documents, in your plan. Second, your money. You have to work. I'm going to show you what the asset report needs to include. But everything on that report, you have to look at that. Is the owner correct, and is the beneficiary correct? And has the value changed by more than up or down 10%? And then have you disposed of any item, liquidated it, gotten rid of it, or have you acquired any new items? Purchased a car, new bank account, new real estate, new RV, whatever. That's how all the money stuff you've got to think about, because any change on those things means, yes, you might need a change in your documents. And then laws, here's what you got to look at, okay? At the federal and at the state level, there are trust laws, there are probate laws, and there are tax laws. Trust, probate, tax. On each of the federal level and the state level, they do make changes regularly, and you can subscribe in Google to different services that will tell you what the changes are, okay? And that's like what we do. That's how we know when stuff changes, right? So if those change, if there are changes, like this year we had a big change with our tax laws and our trust laws and our probate laws. Go figure, holy cow. We see big changes happen every couple of years, just so you know. We see little changes happen every 3 or 4 months, somewhere within those, in that matrix. So that's what you got to monitor. And then you got to say, okay, is there a change in the laws? Yeah, there is. Okay, does it affect me, and do I need to change? Does it affect you? Does it affect your parents? Do you or they need to change their plan? That's what those 3 things have to be looked at, and I recommend once a year sitting down and just looking at that, just like you do your taxes once a year, just like you do your your doctor's appointment, your annual exam. Just, so much of our life is on an annual basis, and I found really that works really well for this. And so far, it's worked 100% of the time. So that's what I recommend every single year. Make those things up to date, like these clients. So this was a single lady. She joined our Trust Care program. And what we do as part of that is every year we go through that list for you, right? And if changes are needed, we make the changes. Her health started to decline 3 years later. It wasn't like a cliff, right? I mean, it just was started to slowly decline, and that's when she realized with us, hey, let's get your daughter. She's the one you've named. Let's get her started to be involved a little bit more, and start a little bit of that transition. That way, it doesn't have to happen overnight. So she did, and the daughter started to kind of help and just go to appointments with her, come to appointments that she had with us, with her doctor, and start to help her shop and just kind of start to get involved in her life. And she, when it got to the point where the daughter with the doctor really realized, you know what, I've got to really start to take care and control of everything, but still having her mom involved and go to appointments and understand and know what's happening. So she really stepped in and started acting as power of attorney and as trustee and as medical. That moment, right, when that moment came, if they didn't have this in place, this would have been one of those circumstances that would have been $50,000 to set up and have adult protective services, the court system, and all the fees that go along with it in order to protect the mom. Would have cost easily $50,000 a year. And then $10,000 a year is a pretty good rough average for what it costs to keep that in compliance, and it's required by the court. You have no choice but to do it. But because of her Trust Care membership and the automated updates that she kept going, and now that the daughter keeps going, no fees whatsoever, no time in court. The court doesn't even know that they are doing this. It's not required if you have everything set up. And her daughter's just taking care of everything. This was really nice because the other two siblings, okay, but they're not super best friends, and one of the other siblings kind of started to get a little bit ugly, but because all of this stuff was in place and the one daughter who's in charge can show them, hey, here's exactly what I'm doing, everything's in order, everything's transparent, she's totally accountable, they just kind of went, okay, we see it's what's supposed to happen, and everything is being taken care of just how it should be. So that's a big success for that family, for her mom, and even for for the siblings who don't quite get along, that they don't feel compelled to drag this thing through an ugly lawyer fighting process, right? So the secret here is update the trust, update the will, the POAs, the medical documents, the plan as a whole, update it using those three things we talked about: your people, the money, and the laws. All right, question number 3, our last topic here. Do you have an asset report for them? We had a case where actually, it should say the dad. The mom was just the surviving widow, but I'll really put the blame on the dad here. He passed away, and mom had to come in, and figure out their financial life. He had always taken care of everything, and it literally took 5 years before the mom, with the help of her daughter, took 5 years to get everything squared away. It was like a game of search and find. I don't know. It was, and the only way to find some of this stuff is just because something came in the mail a year later, or that was a lot of it. They went through all the papers at home. They talked to all the bankers and looked at all the transactions in the bank, because sometimes you'll see a weird little deposit for 12 cents or a withdrawal for $53. and just chasing all those things down. They hired an accountant to help them organize all of this, and it was a nightmare. The daughter who was helping the mom go through this, she literally had to give up her job. She had to stop working and start helping mom full time because it was just such a disaster. And that's hard. I believe she was about 60 when she gave up her job and started working on all this stuff for mom. 5 years later, she's now 65, and she's 5 years out of date with her career, her profession. And over the last 6 months, I've been doing my best actually to help her try to find a position again. And I think she's at the point of giving up and just retiring. She's lost a ton of earning potential. She's lost a ton of income over the years. She's not going to charge her mom for all of that. And, if mom happened to be a multi-millionaire, she probably would, but that just isn't the case. So she's really just stuck now. And it's tough. Can you imagine having to do that? Maybe some of you can't. Maybe some of you are going through that right now. It's hard. So my recommendation is having a asset report up to date and organized as it possibly can be. The first one that you create is the hardest one. Updating it as life goes on that's the easy part. You must create your first version. So here's what you got to include. You're going to sit down with them and you're going to say, if you're the one who's going to be helping them, you say, I don't want to lose my job. I know stories of people who've lost their job because it took so much effort to figure out their mom or dad's finances, and they literally had to put so much time into it that they couldn't. So can we please sit down and confidentially, this is your conversation with your parents, confidentially create a list and just help organize it so that I know what to expect. And I hope you can have that kind of relationship with them. And promise to them, even though it might go without saying, promise to them to keep it confidential, to maintain it as a private, arrangement. Say, look, this is not going to go anywhere. And here's what I recommend creating. You're just going to create, you can do this in paper, you can do it on a computer in a spreadsheet. There are programs even. There's free software, you can use to manage finances. It's all the budget software and stuff that's out there. You're just going to want one column with a description, checking account, savings account, investment, brokerage, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, car, real estate, whatever. Just whatever it is with the description. Maybe another column has the account number or the address or, whatever you're going to use to identify it. The policy, anything like that can go in there. And then I would recommend a value, and it doesn't have to be exact, just something close enough. So is this thing worth 10,000, 100,000, a million, right? Some kind of ballpark. Then I recommend 2 more columns. Critical that you have these on there. First, who is the registered owner? And you can't fill that in. I don't give you permission to fill that in unless you see it on some official documentation from the bank, from the government, from somebody, okay? From the place that's holding the title to the bank account, okay? It's got to be the official title. Okay, the official registered owner, and then the second thing is the official registered beneficiary. A lot of things have beneficiaries. You can put a transfer on death, a TOD, onto a lot of types of investment accounts. You can put a beneficiary on an IRA or on a life insurance. You can put a beneficiary on a car even. So if you have the documentation that shows a actual beneficiary designation, then that's what goes in. That altogether, that is your trust asset report, and then update that year after year after year with changes. If you're really organized, like some of my CPA clients are, you'll update it on a monthly basis. Good for you. Good job. But if you're like most people, admittedly, myself included, you'll do this on an annual basis. And you can just roll this into the work you do for your taxes every year. That kind of makes it, that's a time period that makes sense, right? For some of our clients are also clients of Keystone Wealth Partner. They manage finances and investments and do the retirement planning. They manage and they can keep that whole list up to date, and they do a great job of that because they have all the right software that can figure it out. But you gotta keep it up to date, okay? So third, the trust asset report must be accurate and it must be current. So that's the last tip that I want to give you here. Take a deep breath. I've got a big chunk of more info to share with you on how to do this practically speaking. But I know, take a breath and catch up on your notes there. Because it can feel like a fire hose. And honestly, like, I wish I could go into just a ton more detail, but I would be here, for hour after hour after hour. I'm not going to do that. I know it's already sometimes the feedback I get is that this can feel like it's drinking from a fire hose. It's impossible for me to do this, to teach everything I can in one web class. So if it's okay with you, let me transition a little bit into how we do this as a trust care program, as a service for people, because you may be wondering, hey, well, how do I help my parents? And this is what we do for folks who are in that stage of life, okay? Now, who should be a trust care client? That's what you should know. Number one, our firm, I'm in a t-shirt. I'm a lawyer. I've been doing this for over a decade. I'm not in a black suit with a white shirt and black tie. Today, I'm teaching you this from the comfort of my own home because I want to get this information out there, because we're all homebound for another few days, and so I might as well do something to help. This is who we are. If you are looking for a lawyer who's going to wear a black suit and tie every day in every meeting with you, just isn't going to work. I think, most of those lawyers feel like grumpy cats to me, but I think they work well with grumpy clients. We like to work with happy clients, so if you feel like that fits for your family, you'd probably enjoy working with my team. Second, as far as the assets and the money goes, typically we work with folks who own real estate of some kind, either here or in another state, and have some money in savings, right? Generally, $150,000 or more is a pretty good number to begin with, and that's aggregate of everything. The value of your life insurance, the value of your IRAs, the value of your checking and savings, your money markets, your brokerage, your annuities, anything that's a financial asset. $150,000 or more is a pretty typical starting point for us. We work with clients all the way up to about $5 to $8 million in total net worth. And then what we do is we do foundational planning for clients who have more assets than that. And then we bring in specialists who can advise on those higher level tax strategies for folks who have 8, 10, 20, 50, $100 million in assets. And we help manage those relationships. The process for us is, generally speaking, most of our clients do first come to us through some type of group education like this. We've done this for years in live group settings, but right now we're doing a lot of them online. And so generally speaking, that's the first step. The next step is pretty easy. We do a no commitment first appointment, which we call a discovery hour. And then that's where you just kind of decide, do I want to work with you and get started or not? And we can part friends, and you get a lot of your individual questions answered in that private appointment. If you do choose to move forward, then that's where you start actually building a plan for your parents and getting them squared away. That first private appointment, just so you know how that works, we we are 100% flat fee law firm. We don't bill by the minute or by the hour, so it's not, you're never giving us a blank check. And I hate that perspective of what a lot of law firms do. So that first appointment, all we ask is if it's, your parents would need to come, right? They would need to, or we can do some type of phone conference or video call, but they need to participate if they're able to. Second is whoever the decision makers are about your family, they need to come. They're going to have questions. They need to be able to ask them. What works, what does not work at all is, which sometimes folks ask for, and it just doesn't work, is they come, they ask a bunch of questions, they say, I'm doing research for the family, and then they go back to the family, and the family has 15 more questions. Well, get everybody in the room, come to the appointment together. We can do by phone call or video call, and get everybody's questions answered so you guys can hear the same information and then get your decision made, okay? What else? Yeah, that's kind of it. Like I said, our firm is 100% flat fee. We do all, just packages, and with, options for you and your family. The super most complicated, most plan with all the bells and whistles and protecting from, Medicaid or getting you qualified for Medicaid. Those are $20,000, $25,000 plans. It's pretty rare that anybody starts out like that with us. Plans go all the way down to start at $1,600, $1,700, and they're just whatever you want is what you buy, because it's a package deal. It's a flat fee. You know what it is before you do anything. So that's how our services work. Now, the first appointment is a private appointment, one-on-one with you, your parents, whatever family is going to be involved, and our team, my office. Okay. We always start that first appointment. It's with our client relationship manager. It's not with an attorney. We do that to protect you, honestly. I'm a lawyer, and I'm even saying that. I used to do the first appointment, and what I found was that I was really complicating, I was confusing my clients, because I would spend 30, 40 minutes just barfing out and like vomiting all over you all these legal strategies and tax law and words that nobody understood, and really just confusing people. I've tried my hardest to not do that. It's just hard for us lawyers to not do that. At your first appointment, that I don't want to confuse you, and what we found is it's way better to have somebody who speaks normal English, understands what the services are that we offer, and can help you figure out three things, right? What are your parents' issues? So you can teach us what their issues are. What are their goals? Make sure we understand that, right? The last thing you want is for some lawyer to drag you through a process that doesn't even match your goals. So make sure we get your goals, and then go through what your options are. Okay, now that we know your family, we know your goals, here are the options that are relevant for you. Pluck that off the shelf, this off the shelf, and that out of the shelf, and here's what would make sense, and then you choose what you want to do. Then your very next appointment is with an attorney. And the attorney can go much deeper, help you figure out how to make some hard decisions, give you some framework for advantages, disadvantages, strategy, just, build the plan. So that's the very next appointment. When folks come to us for that first private appointment, you get a bunch of things out of it. You get that first discovery hour, walking out of there with complete clarity about what your family's options are. And if that's all you do, if you don't hire us for anything, you can basically say, boom, I know exactly what I need to do, and march off and say, here are the options that I need to do. And getting that is worth a ton of money. With the cost of the adult protective system being tens and tens of thousands of dollars, you walk out of there with some real crystal clear understanding of what your options are, and the value for there is huge, but I think that's at least worth $500. Second thing you walk out of there with is a personal information book organizer. This is a thing we've created and refined and massaged over the years. that organizes somebody's financial life. And it's not more info than you need to gather. It's not less info than you need to gather. And this could save you hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours down the road as you start to have to take care of your parents' affairs. So that's worth $197. Third is the myths of financial security. None of us want to be blindsided and run out of money, especially in our elderly years. Our sister company that does the financial planning and retirement planning, and they help people figure out I don't want to run out of money, and actually put together like all the pieces of the puzzle, including Social Security, taxes, your investments, your IRAs, your annuities, all of those things. They put all that together for their clients, right? But what they do for our folks that just come to a discovery hour with no commitment, no financial investment whatsoever, they'll go through and share with you what the myths are of that, because the financial industry is probably just as broken as the legal industry, and there's just a lot of, a lot of charlatans out there that are selling things that get paid giant commissions without any disclosure. A lot of conflicts of interest. They will help you learn what those are so that you can just make some better decisions about the financial security for yourself and your parents, right? A successor trustee handbook. If that's you, if you're going to be the successor trustee, you'll want that. That's a guidance of what the job is, what your responsibilities are, what you have to do. Taxes or something else. And then I'll give you a copy of my book, one of my books, Pack Your Parachute, as complimentary from me. There are 12 other things I talk about in that book that I just want you to know, and I want you to learn about for your parents' sake, for your sake, anybody you know you can share that information with. I just want that information to get out there. That's why I put it in a book. So all of that is what happens, and all of that is what you get at the Discovery Hour. Huge value for your life, for your parents, over $1,400 in value. Our firm, for that 1 hour, like I said, flat fee everything, $125, easy, one price. You get that 1 hour, you get to get all your questions answered and leave with just a ton of value, except for my staff. They've been twisting my arms, and so we agreed that what I will do is, so we dropped the price for that at $75. It's 100% money back guarantee, satisfaction guarantee. If you don't get value out of it, I want to know. I want that to be valuable for you, worth way more than the $75. And so if you walk out of there and you're like, geez, that was just a waste of my time, you just say the word, we'll refund your card, no questions asked. I would just love for you to tell me, hey, here's what I thought I was going to get this. I got nothing, and I wish I would have gotten what I wanted. I would love to know that, because I want this to be valuable for you. So if you want that, if you want this kind of special offer, if you need to do this for your parents, what I recommend is jump on. It's easy to schedule. You just go to that URL, that website, and click right through, pick a time that's convenient for you and your parents, your family. Make that payment, attend within the next 2 weeks, and we'll get all of that to you. We can do all of these virtually as well. Like I said, over the phone, over a phone conference, over a video call. Some, if you want, some people in the office, some people on the virtual thing. That's fine. We can figure it out. But there it is. Jump on, get that done, and I invite you to do that. This is the time to not keep our heads stuck in the sand for parents, for those who are most vulnerable. And if you already are a client of ours, I know sometimes we get clients who sit in and come back to these web classes, which is great, good for you. You don't need to come in through this method. Call the office and talk to Pam. She'll get you scheduled. This is for folks who've never done a trust with us and never done a plan with us and want to learn about what that looks like for your family. If you have done a plan with us before, call the office and we'll get you started to get you. You can kind of skip through, and there's a separate process that's a little bit easier for you. Otherwise, that's it. I have nothing else. I wish you a wonderful day. And go out there, take care of your parents, and let's get our community protected. Have a great day, everyone.